A lot of them lately.
So you're still.
I think it's because there's way too many meetings rolling across my desk.
Yeah, that sure doesn't help.
I haven't started on code here and typing those yet from
What was that last week?
That's a good idea.
Next Monday, there's 2 meetings. You got that right? Or no, you haven't gotten that yet, but we will be having 2 meetings. Well, plus aviation, do you do that one too? Do you do aviation board?
I don't really.
And you're like, yep.
You see that commercial code on property is, but that, is that a county classification?
I do. Warsaw Council and Board of Works. Usually those.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. I'm good.
We're the only 2 people in the audience. Come on.
I talked to him on the phone several times, so he's good.
He's good.
All right.
Good.
No, I took care of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Busy?
Good evening, sir.
We just did a. Pretty cool.
Which, another,
Shell building.
besides the building.
Well, no, that's the one.
Weren't you there? Didn't I see you there?
Yeah.
Kimberly was there.
Kim was there. I thought you were.
Was that? I think you were.
Okay, I
Alan
missed.
Steele took care of the invitation.
That's what I
Okay,
thought.
then she's on there. I'm
Well,
on too. There.
well, Carrie was there.
There you go.
Hammer. Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't get an invite.
Whenever you're ready.
We can blame Alan.
I thought I,
It might be, you might just be.
Carrie's part of the project too.
yeah.
Gary's proud. Huh?
Carrie's part of the project, I think, too, so.
Oh,
She-
yeah. You could have been there for.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. If you would, please rise and face the flag and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving to the first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of claims. So we will review those.
Actually, Tim, could you get minutes that I left off the agenda
Oh,
for October 18th? that I
sorry,
sent you an
yes.
email for.
Well, I have read the minutes and I would make a motion to pass them as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
Now, on to claims.
Now, on to claims. And we have quite a list of them today.
Yes, we do.
I hope you got a lot of explanations.
Of course.
Let's take it away.
So most of these are bond payments that are due in either early January or February. And just because we know how the first of the year goes in terms of getting meetings, holidays, and so forth, we like to get these approved so that there's no delay in the payment of the bond. So
They're fixed payments, correct?
they are fixed payments based on their amortization schedules that I believe she's attached to most of these. So you can kind of read through them and see, obviously the 96,001 is, I believe, the City Hall bond payment. 58,000 is Winona PBD Series 3 bond payment. Medtronic bond payment of 112,600. The 57.5 is bond payment for Warsaw Commons. Huntington National Bank 140,455 is Winona PBD 2. Huntington National Bank 63,962.50 is Winona PBD 1. Oh wait, no, sorry, it was
Three.
Buffalo Street. Buffalo Street Street project. And then, 2 Westler Engineering, 36,586, and the 18,745 are for ongoing sanitary sewer design work for the airport industrial park, which was bid. We opened bids on Friday for that project, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. American Structure Point, 8,292, and the 3,012 for the Buffalo Street Plaza design. Troyer Group, 8,377.70 is for the 300 North design. Kemple Associates, 1370 is for the right-of-way takes for the 300 North project. Umball, 1250, and Umball 1125 are for the ongoing bond work for our bond for the airport industrial sewer system.
Very good. Are there any questions regarding these?
Jeremy, as I understand, this last payment to Regions, 96,000 is the last payment?
That's
We,
correct.
and then we, that is put to bed.
City Hall is paid off, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
And some of that payment is coming, or all of that payment is coming out of, all of that payment is coming out of the reserve account.
Meaning?
When you do a bond issue, you have a reserve account. That reserve account is usually 50, well, anymore it's like 25%, but originally, years ago, because we did this 7 years ago, it was 125%, I believe, of the bond payment.
Okay,
So you had 125% of a reserve set aside.
like a contingency?
Contingency if there was
Okay.
any reason for no tax or delay in bond payment. Because we didn't need it, obviously, it's still sitting there, so this specific payment is coming out of that reserve. The remainder of that reserve will be put back into the central TIF district
Oh, not new microphones?
account. Not new microphones.
Okay,
So,
all right.
can't help with it.
Well, good deal.
Any further questions? Hearing none, ask for a motion.
I move to accept all as presented.
We have a
And
motion.
I will happily second that.
We have a motion and a happily second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, new business, the Umball contract.
Yes, it's just a contract for the services of their bond oversight and overview. This payment of this contract will come out of the bond issue, both the legal fees and the accounting fees will be paid out of that bond issue once it's issued. This is the contract for those services.
So as I read this, there's a $55,000, if you will, fixed fee
Yes.
for those types of services. And really, the only additional fees should come from third party.
Yes, there will
And
be.
some travel.
Yes, so from their fee, and then there'll be a fee for the ratings. There'll be an S&P fee for the bond ratings. I believe that's usually somewhere around $7,000 to $9,000 for their rating, which we did just get back, and it was a AA minus. So we've kept our AA minus rating, and then there'll be legal fees as well.
Okay.
Which is additional, I don't remember what page it was on, but that, the additional cost, I didn't see anything specified, but, okay.
And on Exhibit B,
In-
it
okay.
specifies which articles, 6 and 7 of Exhibit A are the two that are not covered by the flat fee,
Okay.
consulting services and disclosure.
Yeah, Umball sets up the bond ratings calls and all that as part of their service.
So does somebody look at their bills when they come in to make sure that, verified that
Yeah.
they're covered by the additional fees over and above? And when do we pay the 55?
After the issuance of the bond. So when we get the bond proceeds, a portion of the bond proceeds will be set aside for the accounting fees, legal fees, and any consulting fees, like the S&P ratings, and if there were any other legal fees that we incurred.
Okay.
Those will be set when they go to issue the bond. They'll set those fees, the reserve account fees, the reserve account portion will be set. All that's set when they issue the bond.
And do you, I couldn't find in my records what that fee, what that $55,000 related to last year. Was it about the same amount?
The last bond issue we did?
No, the last contract we did with Umball prior.
It's been pretty consistent, typically on the bond issues, and this is specific to a bond issue. This is their fee specific to that issuance of that bond.
Okay,
So
good,
for all
thanks,
the
Jeremy.
accounting, the documents that they put together for the bond ratings, for documents they put together to go out to the financing to sell the bond, all that work that they do, typically depending on the dollar amount, this is a larger, and it doesn't vary that much. So whether, in this case, we're looking at a max, I believe, of $7 million, a little over $7 million bond issue. And I think the
So,
last
and this
one.
is, this contract is specific to that.
Specific to that, yes, this is only for that bond
Yeah,
issue.
it does.
The-
Okay, good.
The last bond issue I think we did was Buffalo Street, and I wanna say it was like 49 or 43,000 for their services. Because the same amount of work for them, from an accounting standpoint, exists whether it's a $20 million bond
Large
or
or small,
$10 million
it's the same.
bond. You have to do the same paperwork, you have to put together the same package, you have to sell, you have to put the bond on the market. All that work is the same, so their fees usually are pretty consistently in that 40 to 50.
You know, Jeremy, to just interject, having just gone through the rating process with Jeremy and Lynn, and looking at the work that Umball did to prepare us for that, there's a significant amount of work because the bond, you have to be rated. We did just get notified, we maintained our AA minus credit rating, so whatever they did to help us get prepared worked, so.
Good.
But the work is just that component, when you go through the bond call with Standard & Poor's, to prepare for that, they do a lot of work. It's pretty significant.
Yeah, the S&P, which in this case was the bond rating agency for us, they require a lot of information. Umball prepares all that financial information, and then we sit down and do a bond rating call, go through the bond, all the questions that they have, and they have all that information that Umball's already provided for them. That's just the rating portion. You also have all the bond financing and selling and all that.
That
they
includes
do.
that whole amortization sheet that we looked at.
Includes everything.
When
Well,
you get that bond document,
The bond, yeah, the official bond document will be about that thick.
and the information is current, and it's a great primer, even for me, because it updates where we're at on employment and you
Yeah.
know, who were the top 10 employers, and, I mean,
Top
it's
10
it's
taxpayers, I
comprehensive.
mean, it's very comprehensive.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean,
Good.
frankly, it's good reading, but there's a few dry spots.
I imagine.
Just a few.
And you do the official statement, that's what you'll get a copy of, once the bonds are prepared, and that's what they're working on right now. Like I said, the bond, the bids were opened on Friday. I'm still waiting for Wessler to send me, they're supposed to do that today, I haven't seen it yet. I'm still waiting for them to send me the official bids, to do all the bid tabulations, make sure that all the bidders sent in the correct information. Once we have all that, we'll award the low bid. That information will go to Umball, and they'll finalize the bond documents. We're pretty good. The lowest bid, like I said, it's not been approved yet, but the lowest bid was just over $6 million for the work. The engineer's estimate was a little over 7 million. So it looks like we got some pretty good bids, which very happy for.
Competitive bids.
Competitive bids. We will use that information. I'll sit down with Umball tomorrow. We'll go over those, once I have the official bids, that they've all, have all their paperwork and are correct. Once we have that, I'll sit down with Umball, we'll set where that bond issue is going to be at, and I'll send notifications out.
Any questions to this contract?
Thanks, Jeremy, for
Yeah.
all the clarification,
It's-
appreciate it.
it's-
So do you need a motion for
Yes,
this?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Motion.
Well, I will make it if I know how to make it. It's not a resolution, it's,
No, it's a
Con-
contract, so we're just
contract.
approving the
so you need
contract.
a motion to approve the contract.
Yes.
I would say the Umball contract dated August 7th, 2018. maybe?
Okay, August 7, 2008. I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and second for the Umball contract to be approved dated August 7th, 2018. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Tim, before we get started on the final, I just had.
Yes,
one thing.
Mr. Mayor.
I wanted to ask maybe Kim, you all serve, three of you at my discretion and two from the council. They're single-year terms. There are two council appointees right now, it's Mike and Rick. Kim, could you make sure that it gets put on the council agenda either later this month or the beginning of December for the council to appoint two members to this board? Thank you.
Two good members.
Pardon me?
Two good members.
Moving on.
Moving right along.
I won't get wrong with that.
And on our next one.
That's, I was just gonna do this. Well, I was just- yeah, that's going
No
on.
respect,
Yeah.
right? We do appreciate your attendance here.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Mhm.
Okay, and now the public hearing, TIF presentation.
Yeah, before we get to the TIF presentation, we did get in the mail, and did you get this in their packets? I'll pass it down, you can take a look at it. I'm not entirely sure I understand it, but with the tech park, that property we purchased from Curlin was agriculture, it was cropland through the Department of Agriculture. Apparently, because we started developing it, they reduced the definition of what's a cropland. And we have to sign and send this back to them stating, I guess we agree. I didn't know this existed, so I'm a little,
Is it for a subsidy?
I have no idea, I really don't know.
I think it's for Powell Farms, I think it's
Well,
to show that there's how many cropland left.
It could be, but that,
It's entitled Voluntary Permanent Base Acre Reduction.
We reduced it.
we reduced, obviously, we built the road, we're gonna develop it. It doesn't really mean much to us at this point, but I'm not entirely sure what it is for their records, other than it's
Census.
land, it could be census related, it could be land that's removed from agricultural production.
That's what I'm thinking.
I don't know exactly what they're keeping track of, but.
They keep track of a lot of stuff.
Jeremy may know more about that than I
It
do.
probably is that, but it could affect subsidies, it could affect crop insurance, I'm
Yeah.
not sure, it could affect a lot of things, but they do keep tabs of all that.
But we don't have crop insurance, and all we've done is allowed someone to plant that acreage up until the time that we developed it this year, so.
Yeah, it's the effective cropland was reduced on this farm because of commercial development, and this reduction caused the base acres to exceed the effective cropland, and according to the handbook procedures, the base acres must be less than or equal to the effective cropland on a farm, so we must sign this document to approve. that make any sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so, let you guys have a look, do we need to approve that as
Yeah, you just need, you need to sign it as the owners of the property, so you just need to approve signing and sending this back to the Department of Agriculture.
So we all need to sign it?
Well.
Or just the president and vice president?
You just need to approve Tim to sign it, and we'll send it back to the Department of Agriculture. If we do nothing, they're gonna do it anyhow, so, I mean, we could technically do nothing, and they're still going to do it, but I wanted you to see it, more or less.
Per the planner's request, I request that the president of this board sign that document.
do I have a second? Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jim.
While Jeremy's setting up the presentation, I just wanted to mention something. This short 2-minute animated cartoon was put together by AIM, and it's just a primer on how TIF districts are set up and how they work. Jeremy did a marvelous job with the presentation. I insisted that we just insert this, not knowing who would be here. It does give a good primer, and I would ask if you have folks that don't understand TIF, this might be the first thing for them to do is just to watch this.
Is this available on the on the city?
I've got it. Jeremy and I have it, and I can get it to you guys, but it's just a good explanation of TIF.
No, I
Very
mean,
simple.
in this, on the city
website.
website. Can we
I
make it
put it on
available?
there, yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Because a lot of people don't understand TIF
Right.
at all.
This is as
I'd like-
basic as it gets.
I'd like to make it, yeah. And
May I
that-
shut the light?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor, does the county have access to TIF also? Can they do TIFs?
Yeah.
And do you have TIF districts?
In fact,
I want to formally welcome Joni.
You know, I guess I knew that.
Want to
I guess
formally
I knew
welcome Joni Truex, representing the Kosciuszko County Redevelopment Commission tonight. Thank you for coming.
So, this is a public hearing for all of the taxing agencies within the Redevelopment Commission or TIF district area. So, all the taxing agencies that are underlying taxing groups associated with the TIF districts have been invited to this public hearing to talk about TIF, the impact of TIF on potentially them in the community. Like Mayor Joe said, we have a short little video. It's 2 minutes, 19 seconds. We'll watch that, and then we'll go through the presentation.
It's hard to hear Jeremy.
TIF preserves existing revenue for overlapping taxing units and sets the stage for meaningful gains. Once the base assessed value is determined, all property taxes collected on the base assessed value continues to be passed to the district's overlapping taxing units. Any revenues generated above what is produced from the base AV is either saved in order to fund a future project without borrowing, or used to pay debt services on bonds for a current project or projects benefiting the TIF district. When investment in the TIF district grows as expected, so does the need for new infrastructure and amenities. TIF is a tool to self-finance these projects without spreading costs to all property tax payers. In 2009, the state restructured educational funding and began using the general fund rather than property taxes for Indiana's K through 12 education. Therefore, capturing the incremental AV within a TIF district does not impact school operating funds. TIF can have immediate financial benefits for overlapping taxing units. Many redevelopment commissions, or RDCs, fund projects requested by overlapping taxing units or make the choice to directly pass through incremental revenue generated by the TIF district. What's more, the RDC and council are required to consider a plan for excess funds when revenues reach 200% above what is needed to cover obligations. And TIF districts don't go on forever. No more than 25 years after any TIF bonds have been issued, the TIF must sunset and the full value of the district is achieved. Overlapping taxing units benefit from revenue increases made possible by the district. The result is a strengthened community, all without increasing property taxes. To learn more about how Indiana communities are using TIF as a quality of place driver, visit aimindiana.org/TIF.
So that video gives you just kind of an idea of how TIF works and how communities have used it. We're going to talk specific to some of the things that we have done, as well as how it has impacted our community, not only for the various taxing agencies, but for the community as a whole. So that video talked a little bit about this, but the biggest thing to understand from a TIF or a tax increment financing is how it works itself. The development, TIF districts capture development that occurs within the district. It does not capture taxes or development that already exists within the district. So anything new that comes into that district, that's what TIF is capturing. It's not capturing the existing base. The existing base continues to pass through to all taxing agencies that were there when it was originally created. We then use that TIF increment to create improvements, much like the videos talked about. And those improvements could be infrastructure. Those improvements could be fostering or helping create future development, not just based on infrastructure. Winona PVD and Medtronic were both examples of Medtronic was a bond financing through Medtronic. Winona PVD was an equipment purchase through the RDC. So you have your base AV, which is what exists when the TIF district is created. You have your incremental AV, what's captured during the existence or the lifespan of the TIF district, and then the TIF district expiration. Once it expires, all of that AV goes to all the taxing agencies that are underlying within those TIF districts. So what is the TIF impact of an underlying tax agency? Primarily the impact is tax collected and tax rate. Secondary impacts would be jobs created, commercial and potentially residential growth created from the developments that would occur within the TIF districts. And then you have income, sales tax, payroll taxes collected. All of those taxing possibilities go through two different taxing agencies, not necessarily those within the TIF districts themselves, but they have an impact on the taxes that are generated, whether it's employee taxes or sales tax. All of that is created when you create opportunities for new development. I put this chart up here primarily to show you the tax rate for the county, city, and Wayne and the school. Primarily to show you that we've had TIF districts from the early 1990s through 2018, and as you look at that chart, you'll notice that there aren't any major increases or decreases. The 2005 was based on the assessed value changes that occurred in that time frame, so you notice all the rates went down based on those AV changes, but they all stay pretty consistent across the time frame. Gives you a pretty good indication that the creation of TIF districts aren't driving up or increasing tax rates. This slide's a little backwards, so 2009 is on one side running up to 2018, but the same thing. There's really no major drastic spikes, uncontrolled tax increases that TIF would have created. It's pretty steady growth as you go from 2009 to 2018. Same thing with the assessed value growth. You notice over from 2016 to 2019, you can look at the assessed value growth for those, the school, Wayne County, and the city. Pretty steady growth. You don't see any spikes, you don't see any dips. All indications that although we have TIF districts and we continue to maintain TIF districts, it's not directly affecting the assessed value. You're not seeing major inflection or deflection in those values. So how do you quantify the impact? There are three different potential ways to look at TIF district. One is if no TIF, no development, no taxes created. So it would have a negative or zero impact across the board. The theory being that the creation of the TIF districts creates development. If you don't have the TIF district, you don't have the development, so it doesn't have a negative or a positive impact on the community. You can look at the value of a TIF district after factoring in funds generated by economic development projects. So as projects occur, like I had stated before, they have an impact on other taxes that are collected. They have an impact on other growth that occurs. So every time we build, we have an industry that comes in like Patrick Industries and adds 100 jobs. Those people shop here, those people eat lunch here, those people go to school here, and their kids go to school here. Those people will go out to shop and they have homes here, so they potentially could buy a house here. Maybe they haven't lived here before, they move here and buy a house. On average, the city of Warsaw sees 60 to 65 new homes built a year. Those new homes being built are generated by job growth. Without the creation of job growth, you don't have new homes. Those new homes don't exist. Those taxes don't exist that go out to all the taxing agencies. So when you look at factoring in the value of that economic development project, it goes beyond just looking at what that tax or what that specific project generates within a TIF district. The third potential way to look at it is factoring in what is referred to as the TIF margin, specifically associated with TIF revenue. The TIF margin is if you have taxes generated by a TIF district, let's say it's $1,000, and you have a taxing agency who all have tax caps. There's only so much money you can collect as a taxing agency. And let's say you're at the top of your max tax collection. Regardless of whether there's $1,000 collected through the TIF, if that were to be passed through, you wouldn't collect that $1,000. You would collect whatever the difference is between your max cap and what's being generated by the TIF. So if you had a $1,000 TIF district that generated $1,000 that was collected by the TIF, and you had taxing agencies and all of them were at their max caps, if you passed through that $1,000, zero taxes would be collected. So if there was no TIF, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're collecting more taxes. It's purely based on your ability to collect taxes. If you're already at your cap, you're not generating any new taxes. The TIF would just go away and more or less reduce the rate. So if we look at no TIF, no development, obviously we're using the TIF funds to create development. Those developments create tax income that we then use to create more development. So one of the ways to look at is there an impact is to look at two different areas, one TIFed, one not TIFed. We recently TIFed the airport industrial park, but I want to give you a look at what has occurred within the northern TIF versus the airport industrial, what I refer to as the airport industrial park, the 420 acres we just annexed versus the northern TIF. This is a current assessed valuation. Northern TIF district is nearing 140 million. The airport industrial park is at 20 million. Taxes generated by the northern TIF district, 2.8 million. Taxes generated by the airport industrial park, $260,000. AV growth from 2015 to 2017. Northern TIF district grew by 18 million. The airport industrial park grew by 200,000. So when you look at the no TIF, no development, it's a pretty, you can tell that it's a pretty good argument in terms that if you don't have TIF, you're not creating development. And if you're not creating development, you're not creating assessed value. So the theory that this growth will occur without the improvements, the investments that we're making through our TIF district, through the technology park, as you can see by the images up here, it doesn't exist. Everybody would rather have the $18 million and not the $200,000. Not only because the $18 million generates a broader tax base, but mostly because it's how your community grows, it's how it continues to thrive. You don't have that growth, you're not growing. If you're shrinking, you're not going to survive in the long run. So that's a brief look at the no TIF, no development. If we go to the value factoring, which we're factoring in the value of an economic development project, not just on the taxes it creates within a TIF district, but on the taxes it generates outside of or in conjunction with. So if we look at the northern TIF impact for 2017, I don't have the 2018, so the best I can do at this point is 2018. The increment, like I said, is generating roughly 2.8 million. If we were to take out the economic development projects that were basically generated directly from the investments that we made, you'd be down to less than $1 million of increment collected, or sorry, $500,000, so around 400,000. When you factor in the tax impact, this includes job creation, homes created, their impact in terms of employment, taxes. You drop below and you become a negative number. So the impact of not having the northern TIF district is actually a negative impact on the community as a whole, because you have 300 jobs that have been created just in the last 5 years of the creation of our technology park between Wynano PVD, Banner Medical, and Patrick Industry. That's potentially 300 homes that aren't built. That's 300 jobs that don't pay employment tax. That all has a negative impact on your community as a whole, because those are all taxes you are not getting, whether it's this individual underlying taxing agencies or the community as a whole. Those are taxes that aren't generated, whether it be through edit, seed it. They're not coming back to the community because they don't exist. The same thing can be seen with the central TIF. The increment is just under, right around 300,000. I think it's 315,000. When you take out the Zimmer Biomet, which was the original economic development project of the central TIF, you drop down to less than $50,000 generated. When you factor in the Z Hotel, which is not collected within the TIF district, which was directly related to Zimmer Biomet headquarters. No Zimmer Biomet headquarters, not going to be a Zimmer Hotel. You're now at a negative impact on the community as a whole. They now have lost tax revenue without the TIF district. So same impact, different TIF district, but same impact. You take away the economic development projects, you're not generating the future development that would occur based on those TIF district investments. The Wynona Interurban, obviously it's not generating much money. There's not much of an impact across the board for anybody. We continue to work on the GACI project. That will be its potential to create an impact for the community as a whole, but as of right now, there's not much increment and not much impact generated by that TIF district. Eastern TIF, relatively new, created around 2012, I believe, generating just over 300,000 increment. You take out the economic development projects that were created, and you're dropped down to right around 150,000. When you factor in the tax impact of the development that has occurred in that area, once again, you're at negative numbers. And that just goes back to job creation. You take out Parkview, look at the jobs that Parkview has, look at the impact on the payroll it has, look at the impact the YMCA has. All those projects are a direct result of the improvements that we've made to Husky Trail, the improvements that we've made to Mariners Drive, the improvements that we've made to Parker Street. they all directly impact the ability of this area to develop and to create those jobs that have a broader impact on the community as a whole, whether it be through income taxes, sales tax, new homes, job creation. All of that has a larger impact than the increment that's collected off the property taxes. So if we go back to impact of the TIF margin, this one's a lot harder to calculate, partly because I don't have the information to calculate this. I don't know what the county collects. I don't know what all these taxing agencies collect in general. But so what I've done here and what you're going to see in slides is just an estimation, or to show you how the margin, the TIF margin would work. So if you look at the city's TIF districts as a whole, we collect just under $3.5 million within the city TIFs. And if you look at the dollar for dollar, this is if there was no increment. So you see the increment there at 3.5 million. And then if you look at across, those are all the revenue that would be collected by the various taxing agencies. Obviously the two largest impacts would be to Warsaw and to the school corporation. So those are taxes that, if there were no TIF districts, would be more or less open for them to collect. Now, if you assume that each agency was within $100,000 of their max tax collection, then you can see what that impact would have. Now, I don't know what their max tax collection is. My understanding is most of them are probably pretty close to their max, but I can't tell you whether it's $50,000 or $10,000. We won't know until the final tax dollars come in for 2018. But if you assume, just to show you how that TIF margin works, if you were to assume that each one of them was within 100,000, then you can see all of a sudden the increment drops down because they're only going to collect what's left between what they're collecting and the cap. So if all that's left is $5,000, in most of the townships, it's a very fine margin because they don't have a high tax rate and they're not collecting a lot of tax. They're pretty much right at their tax caps. There's very little margin for them to collect. So in general, a township, even if there were no TIFs, would only be eligible to collect $1,000 or $2,000 more. The three largest impacted probably would be the school corporation, Warsaw, and the county. Would be the three largest taxpayers that could potentially be impacted, but that's purely based on whether or not they're at their tax caps. And if they're at their tax caps, then the impact could be significantly less. But the idea that $3.5 million that's collected by TIF would go to other taxing agency is where the fallacy is at. That's not true. It would be based on whether or not the margin is there for them to collect. It could be that all the taxing agencies are way below their tax collections. But if you look at their past collections, that's typically not the case. Typically, they're within 5% or less of their max cap. So the reality is you may only be opening up 10 or 15% of that $3.5 million to be collected. So what's the true impact? It's probably a combination of all three, obviously. The TIF margin exists. It's harder to calculate because we don't have real-time information. I don't know what we're going to collect for this year. I don't know what the county, I don't know what the townships are going to collect. I don't know what their end collection is going to be. We do know what their max tax caps are, but that doesn't do us a whole lot of good if we don't know what the end, and we won't know until December, the last payment in December, what they will have generated as a whole. So obviously that has an impact. But the more important thing for communities and TIF and how you use it, the bigger impact is your growth. The bigger impact is your jobs, and the bigger impact is the investments that are being made within the community. And all of those impacts are positive, not negative. So if you look at it from a view of whether or not TIF is a positive thing or a negative thing on a community, job growth is a positive. Investments in your community are a positive. The max levy is probably going to have a minor impact on what is or isn't collected. So in terms of looking at it from an impact on the community, TIF districts have a lot larger positive impact than they do negative impact. And a lot of that can be seen by the boards up here and the projects we've been working on, the pictures that were in this presentation, the tech park development that we have, the $6 million investment we're about to put into an airport industrial park that had an AV growth over 2 years of $200,000. I'd much rather have an $18 million AV growth in that industrial park, not a $200,000. That's what we're trying to achieve. When these TIF districts expire, they'll have a true impact on the community and the investments that they've created, the jobs they've created, and the tax rate in the future as the investments we make roll off and are collected by all taxing agencies. They'll have a real positive impact on our tax rates in the future. I would ask if anybody has any questions, but it looks like the county, Joni showed up, so I appreciate it, Joni.
Nice presentation.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. That was very good.
So if you have any questions or any thoughts on it, certainly I can answer them.
When I was down at the AIM conference, one of the accounting firms went to 3 separate counties and figured every tax bill in the county. It was one that had a very high impact on their property tax caps, moderate and low. And it showed what Jeremy was explaining, that if you have X amount of dollars and all of a sudden there's no TIF, it doesn't go back in one for one. And especially in our community, I'm not going to quote it because I'll miss it, but I've got that information, and the impact that TIF has on our community, as Jeremy so wonderfully explained, has to do with the growth and development, and not the fact that somebody's getting squeezed out of some tax dollars, because it's minimal. It's not one for one. And in this community, I want to say on $1,000, it was like $13. It's not a one for one. So, a very good presentation. But I do have extra information to share if you're interested. And it actually showed each county what the property tax impact, the tax cap impact was, tax cap credits for our county, and you can kind of extrapolate between those 3 examples of actual real-time data. And it was a very good presentation as well. Jeremy, thank you for all the work you put into that, because I know it's a difficult subject to understand, but I think you were very articulate in showing how in this community we're using TIF dollars to benefit everybody.
Yeah, the investments that we have made within the TIF districts have created the developments and the job growth that we want to see as a community. Those investments, TIF is a long game, not a short game. If you're looking at it through a short-term view, you're only going to see what I'm not getting today. If you look at it through a long-term view, you're going to see what you're getting tomorrow. And that's really what TIF districts afford you the opportunity to do, is to create opportunities for the future and hope that they turn into what we've developed. We spent a lot of time and a lot of effort and energy creating our TIF plans that you approve every year, and the project list and the project based in there, in hopes that those projects will generate the growth that will fuel the future of Warsaw. The technology park and the developments that we're making there in the Northern TIF district, and the developments and improvements that we're going to make in the airport industrial park, that's the future of Warsaw. That's where its growth and that's where sustainability will come from. If we don't have the ability to create those projects, then you're gonna be left with the 200,000, not the 18 million.
And we want the 18 million.
It's been a privilege for me to see the short-term investments related to tax increment finance, and then now I'm starting to see the long-term benefits, sitting, privilege here on the council. I was thinking short and long-term, and then all of the, as you say, primary impact and then secondary impact that this has. I'm learning and I'm seeing it, and I appreciate it. It's been good, a good story. So, and hopefully it will continue.
Yeah, hopefully it will. I mean, that's our goal. We've been very successful within the Northern TIF district. I anticipate we will be just as successful in the Eastern, as now it's being absorbed by the Northern. They're just monikers, the name doesn't matter. It's the impact that matters. It's the investment that we're making. It's the $6 million we're putting into the ground for those industries that exist now that are paying taxes. That base is going to stay there, but now they have the ability to grow that they didn't have before. I've already received phone calls from those industries saying, hey, there's new processes we need to add. When are we going to have the sanitary sewer? We can't do the things that we want to do because a septic can't handle the waste that we need to produce from the processes we're adding. So this is the type of growth that's going to be afforded to them that they don't have and can't do now. This is going to keep industries there that are there now. It's going to allow them to grow, and it's going to create opportunities for new investments to occur within that area that couldn't occur now and haven't occurred over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. I can tell you from personal experience, the Medtronic building was in 1999. We built that building and used some of the TIF money to extend the utilities out there. That was sanitary sewer, it was utilities, it was gas and electric and a few other things. About a $2 million investment on the part of the state. Under that, for that $2 million, we were required to report. The target was 350 people employed in that building at the end of 10 years. At the end of 7 years, we had already exceeded 500 people. So the ripple effect, what we referred to it at that time, it's maybe old school, but it still has some relevance here. The ripple effect was 150 more jobs than we even expected on top of that, and more than paid back in the community for that additional 150 people being employed within a 10-year period. And those bonds are now almost paid off. I mean, it was a 20-year bond, I believe.
Yeah.
And
like 2022.
next year, 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's either 2020 or 2021.
It's 2020.
Yeah.
Because it was, by the time we got it issued, it was 2000. So I can attest to the fact, and this is public record. I'm not telling anything out of school here. It's a matter of public record. It's recorded in EDIT, Economic Development. Acronym stands for ITAC.
Yeah.
Economic Development Income Tax. We submitted those reports every year right off our payroll, and the payroll withholdings more than showed in Indiana and federal government taxes how much more was being included in the communities than what was previously even forecasted in the building of that, in the structuring of that building here in Warsaw. And there was some competition to build it in Memphis, Tennessee. So the state stepped up, the city stepped up and built it here, retained all those jobs here, and actually exceeded the target. So it works. It absolutely works. And then that Medtronic became the anchor for that tech park.
Yeah, that's
out there
what I
because
wanted to say
the-
that. Yeah, it's,
all those utilities now are extended on out to the industries to the north of Medtronic and across the road on Polk Drive, the Ivy Tech and the Patrick Industries banner, so forth. So it's been a very, very beneficial
positive, yeah.
expansion of the TIF district in that area. So I'll get on my soapbox.
You know, I too have benefited from TIF district, from the county, not the city, but
Yeah.
it's the ripple effect, like you said. You don't know what it's gonna lead to, right?
Exactly.
And it leads to a lot, so.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised at what has occurred out there. I would have been pleased if it just met the original forecast, but we far exceeded that.
TIF is often difficult to understand how it works, and I think state and AIM and the Redevelopment Commission kind of taken on the job of trying to educate the public and making sure they understand that, you know, in the past, it had a greater impact, a negative impact on what the schools collected.
Yeah, it
But
did.
when the state legislature changed the funding from business personal property taxes to state funding for operations and maintenance of the school corporations, it changed it, but the thought process was still that if cities are creating TIF districts, they're taking away from not just schools, but the overlapping units. So with the changes and with, again, the positive impacts of TIF, it's not an easy job to articulate it. Like I said, Jeremy did a great job
Yeah.
tonight, and that helps people understand that TIF there's a short and a long-term benefit, Jeremy, or Jeff, as you suggest, and the schools and all the overlapping units are benefiting handsomely from that, which, you know, we've got to step up. I mean, the cities utilize that money to stay ahead of the game, to create shell buildings that hopefully attracts opportunity. But, you know, in our case, we've attracted private investors to collaborate and share that creating these spec buildings, if you will. So our partners in the shell building are private dollars that we've been able to utilize public TIF revenues through the Redevelopment Commission, leveraged with private dollars, are going to create this fabulous, really innovative 50,000 square foot shell building. We're just excited as heck to have. And that's just one of the projects on the legend over there. So having private dollars, having people buy in, especially local partners, is really gratifying.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll close the public portion of this meeting now. And back to our agenda. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for that. I know there are multiple ways to present this information, and a much more, there's actually a much more complicated way to do so, but I think it'd be very much more difficult to understand, frankly, and looking at the details that you showed me. So suffice it to say, this is summarized down to a point where it's easy to understand yet, and it's fairly complicated even at that. So, any other comments from?
I think the most exciting part about this is the vision that the city planner has, and the mayor has, that this group has, that we've brought together the coalition of public and private money. I mean, that has to be pretty unique. I don't know of any place else that's doing that, and we're really fortunate that that's happening. Because that's what's driving the whole thing. I mean, anyone has the toolbox.
It becomes the catalyst.
It is, it's
You guys
this
are the
board.
catalyst.
It is, it's this board.
And when we show with our dollars, and you show with your votes, and we believe in a project, you know, private money steps up.
Yeah. It's a perfect storm.
It's cutting
Really.
edge, isn't it? Thinking. It's cutting edge thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because anybody can pick up the TIF toolbox, but to make it work, the way we're making it work is pretty spectacular, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Kudos.
challenging.
I mean, it takes vision and planning.
Take your compliment, Jeremy. Good job. He's done it.
Takes planning, oh, city planning.
You lay in bed at night thinking of this stuff, Jeremy? Or-
Always.
Good job.
Okay.
I make a motion to adjourn if we're ready.
Do I hear a
Second.
Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, good meeting.
Very good.
As soon as you